Bom dia, boa tarde, boa noite para você que está acompanhando essa entrevista aqui no Instituto Brasil-Israel. Eu sou Anita Efraim, sou jornalista, sou coordenadora de comunicação aqui do Instituto Brasil-Israel, o IB, e hoje a gente vai fazer uma entrevista com o Ami Dror, que é um dos líderes das manifestações que estão acontecendo em Israel. A gente vai trocar a língua, a gente vai falar inglês, mas vai estar tudo legendado para você conseguir entender a gente. Hi, Ami. I was just telling everyone that you are one of the leaders of the rallies that are going on in Israel, the pro-democracy rallies that are going on. And I would like to thank you for being here with us in Instituto Brasil-Israel. It's a pleasure.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
So, Ami, can you present yourself to everyone who's watching us and tell a little bit how you ended up being one of the leaders of the pro-democracy rallies in Israel?
So first of all, I'm a tech entrepreneur. I have two companies in the education space, one that teach kids how to write books and one that teach coding. So my introduction to the environment was when we saw what damage the legal coup can create to the tech system and to the tech entrepreneurs, and we see it actually happening already, which is very sad. Other than that, I was the head of security for Benjamin Netanyahu when he was the prime minister for the first time. So I actually know him extremely well. Meaning I was in the Israeli Secret Service, etc. So I have both a business present and a background which comes very deep from the government.
Wow, that's very interesting. And can you tell a little bit more about this relationship with Benjamin Netanyahu? Do you think this turns your participation even more relevant to the government to see the pressure that people are doing in Israel? And if this relationship you two have, is it important for these demonstrations? We're now seeing on the screen some people in Tel Aviv on the demonstrations also.
Yeah, so clearly the fact that I know the prime minister and the environment very well is clearly helping, but that's not the point. If I was his bodyguard right now, I'll still be protecting him, because protecting the Israeli prime minister is protecting the Israeli democracy. What's happening in Israel is that it's in reality, it's a tragedy. It's not the same Benjamin Netanyahu I used to know. Benjamin Netanyahu, if you like him or not, he was always a very central prime minister. He always made sure that he have people on his left and on his right in order to do good things for Israel. And again, that I know not everybody will accept it. But something happened to Benjamin Netanyahu in the last couple of years. And this specific government shows the problem. You see that from a prime minister that cares about the government, he cares only about himself and is on legal survival. He is involved with a couple of, as you probably know, legal cases, and those legal cases are actually preventing him from running the country. And as a result, we see a dysfunctional country that is trying to pass laws that are damaging all Israelis.
And I think this is a very complicated question, but I would love to hear you about that. Do you think Netanyahu is now a part of the far right, the Israeli far right, or is he a hostage of the Israeli far right in order to protect himself from justice?
I will start by saying that Netanyahu was never even in the right. He's a very central politician. Calling him right or far right is almost funny. And Netanyahu never, never started a war. He never started to building the settlements. He was always very central. The only issue with Netanyahu is who controls him. And while in the past he used to be in control, right now he's clearly controlled by the extreme right and by the ultra-Orthodox. And the fact, by the way, that there is extreme right in his government, I also will not say that this is the most radical problem. If you look at the budget that the Israeli government is passing right now, there is about $4 billion US dollars, probably five, that is being paid to the ultra-Orthodox organizations. It's not even the public. in order to gain their support. This is almost like a political bribe. You bribe people, so they are definitely not right. Most of them are anti-Zionist. And he's paying this money because he needs them, because without them, he will not be the prime minister. Without being the prime minister, he will need to deal with this court case. So this is true almost to every direction, whether it's the ultra-Orthodox or the extreme right, because every person in the current government can say, if you don't give me everything that I want, I will not be with you. Meaning, if you not give me anything I want, you're going to jail. And this is the real story.
Yes, and from Brazil, we've been watching real closely the reaction to the judicial reform. And I would like to know from you why this subject is so important to Israel and all its citizens, being like very able to unite so many people on the streets.
So Israel does not have a constitution. We have only one house of parliament. So the separation between the different branches of the legal system is very clear. Once the government and the parliament are kind of working together, the Supreme Court and the legal system are the only one that can protect the Israeli democracy. Now, why is it so critical? Because, for example, if you're a soldier in the army, you're flying a plane, and the world will not see the Israeli legal system as an independent and just system, you don't have any protection, meaning our pilots will be sued by the international law. If you are a high-tech entrepreneur like me and your intellectual property is not secured, you cannot. If the government can go and take some of their money, by the way, something that they just did this week with the municipal authorities, that they came to them and say, oh, we're going to take some of your budget, now it belongs to the central government. When you see those signs, what happens is that the Israeli companies are not raising money. If they register abroad, and people, especially in the most critical parts of the army, cannot serve. So this means that if you look at the Israeli community, every Zionist organization in Israel is protesting. The only people that are supporting Netanyahu are pretty much two groups or three groups. One, ultra-Orthodox. They can care less about democracy. They don't run in democracy. So that's a very easy, you give us what we need, meaning money, and we'll give you the support. Then you have the Messianic parties, which are on the far right, not all of them, by the way. And they want to establish a religious country here in Israel. And same thing, he gives them everything they want. And the last group of people are people that we call them here Bibistim, which means people that support Bibi, that after so many years with Bibi in power, they admire him as a person, regardless of his policy. They're a tiny minority. We saw on the polls that if Netanyahu currently have a little bit more than half of the parliament, 64 seats, all the polls right now are showing that is down by 20-25%. So the Israeli public, once they voted for those parties and they understood right now what Netanyahu is doing to the country, they stop. It damages every family in Israel financially. If you look at our income from taxes, every economic integrator element, we are down. We are falling apart as a society, as an economy. And sadly, Netanyahu, and again, it's not really about Netanyahu himself, it's its entire environment. They care about it, but they care more about his freedom from jail than of the country.
And I think that one of the main questions people are asking themselves now about Israel is, can Israel be at the same time a Jewish and a democratic state? What do you think about that? Because you were just talking about this ultra-Orthodox people in Israel, and they want to be a Jewish Alahic state. But what about other lectures of being Jewish? Is it possible, Jewish and democratic state?
Yeah, totally. If you look at the Israeli Declaration of Independence, it defines Israel as a Jewish democratic state. What does it mean? It means that it's a country that is Jewish by definition, but it gives equal rights to every person which is not Jewish, being Muslim or Christian or Druze or Baha'i, all counts. And this was the case, or at least inspirational case. I will not say it was like the case for real, but at least this is what the country and the legal system aspire for. Now, also when you define Jews, Jewish people doesn't mean ultra-Orthodox. There are tens of types of Jewish people, from Reform to conservatives to Orthodox, different, there's like anti-Zionists, there's Zionists, there's like, it's just
Jewish that do not believe in God.
Exactly, secular like me. So, so when you look at all those things, it doesn't prevent. So it needs to be something that gives everybody the same rights. But what happens now is the two castes or two segments of the Jewish world, the ultra-Orthodox. And again, this is a very specific, it's not a typical ultra-Orthodox person. This is some rabbi, some organization, usually very wealthy, that makes a lot of money from this from these things. They took ownership of what's being Jewish, and the same thing is kind of the messianic, etc. But I'm not part of those people. I'm Jewish. Definitely, it's my country. And by the way, this is probably one of the keys of this protest. Like, people that define themselves as Jewish or non-Jewish, but Israelis, they see the country being, I don't want to say stolen, but being changed in a way which is against our Declaration of Independence and against the wish of the public voters as well. And this is why we resist.
And now on the screen, we're seeing a picture that demonstrates that we're seeing the Israeli populations on the streets all over the country, but the biggest rallies are in Tel Aviv, where we have already seen more than 500,000 people. So, Ami, do you think this is going to continue until Netanyahu and its government give up on this judicial coup?
It will continue, it will change. When you say, by the way, the protests are happening right now in 150 locations every weekend. So it's not only Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv is the central gathering, but it's huge. It's almost every city in Israel. And I think those protests will continue. There is like lots of other activities, like, following the members of the parliament, the ministers, we are kind of chasing them wherever they go. So the pressure on them is building up. There's a lot of pressure on them from their families, from their friends, from people that not everybody in this coalition is following the same agenda. In fact, if you speak with them in like behind the scenes, I would say that probably half of the people in this coalition are against the activities of this coalition, and maybe 10% of them are publicly talking about it. So this government will not last for long. I can't tell you if it's a matter of 2 months or more, but you see the cracks within this government because the people there understand that while Netanyahu is benefiting from this, delaying or kind of stalling his legal case, ultra-Orthodox are making all the money in the world. They are like they've never been wealthier because of the kind of political bribes that they get. But everybody else is being damaged because people are coming to them and saying, you instead of being devoted to the kingdom, to Israel, you are devoting yourself to the king. And we will, when you run yourself, there will be a payback. They're all understanding. And we see those cracks in this coalition all the time. So I don't think they will last for long. And as for the protest will continue. There will be waves. There will be waves of 500,000 people and smaller waves of 100,000 people. But those waves will continue because we don't have any other land. This is our country. We have nowhere else to go. And therefore, everybody that is fighting here, exactly as we fight our enemies outside of Israel, we will fight the forces that are trying to turn us into a dysfunctional democracy or a dictatorship.
And Ami, I would like to hear you a little bit about the Arab participations on these demonstrations. Do you think there is a lack of representativeness in those cases? Like, I'm not talking about the Palestinians, I'm talking especially about the Arabs that live in Israel. There are Israelis. What do you think about that?
So first of all, most of the Arabs that live in Israel do define themselves as Palestinian. Just the
ones that are not living in the West Bank.
Yeah, so you see very small participation, and the argument for this is like, we never lived in a democracy. Like, why do you expect us to come and vote? So this will be probably the popular voice in the street in the Israeli Arab places. We did see a lot of Arab speakers coming to the stages. we do see in some areas, probably not in Tel Aviv, but in areas that are like in places like Haifa, you see a lot of Arab protesters as well. We see all the Druze community, which are extremely active in the protests in every, wherever they go. So we do see them. Yes, it's not the same. It's not the same segment. By the way, we also see people tend to say that it's like left against right. I would say that if you go to a typical protest, probably half of the people there are defining themselves as right politically. They don't define themselves as left. And, people say like, it's mainly secular people. It's not true. If you go to the protests in Tel Aviv, yes, maybe 5% will be religious. But if you go to the protests in Jerusalem, you'll see probably half of the people that are religious. So it really crosses every demographic, every sector. Naturally, there are people that are more active, visual, etc., and people that are less. But it does. I think the secret here of this protest is there is something common to all of us, which is we want to save the Israeli democracy. And clearly, if you are an Arab or a Druze or a Jew or a religious Jew or a secular Jew, it's in common for all of us. We all know that if those things will pass, Israel will not be a home for us anymore. It will be only a home for ultra-Orthodox Jews and Messianic Jews.
And in IBI, we organize a beautiful act in favor of Israeli democracy here in São Paulo, Brazil, and also a letter with more than 2,000 signatures that was delivered in hands to the Israeli ambassador in Brazil. And I would like to ask you about what's the role of the diaspora in this situation?
The role of the diaspora, especially the Jewish diaspora, is so critical. One of the main laws that they are trying to pass is the grandchild law, meaning that if you're a grandchild of somebody that was not Jew, you are not be entitled anymore to come to Israel and become an Israeli citizen. This is a very radical, ultra-Orthodox law that will affect any or every Jewish family in the diaspora. A lot of people do not understand it because when they talk to people in the government, they say, oh, no, this is just the ultra-Orthodox. They want to pass it, but we don't want to pass it. Well, we see how they control the government. So the role of the diaspora, exactly like you guys in Brazil, being active, protesting, talking to your government, talking with the Israeli ambassadors, when our representatives are coming to Brazil, protest against them. We do it everywhere in Israel. And for example, there is like the Israeli Week in New York coming up next week or in 2 weeks. There will be massive protests there because we are chasing them. So the diaspora's role is extremely important. And again, it's for the diaspora. It's like if you don't fight for it, and then you want to go move to Israel, and they tell you, oh, you don't wear a yarmulke, therefore you cannot immigrate to Israel. That's eventually what they want to do. So it's critical. And by the way, also the people in Israel, like we shared your letter, we shared pictures from your protest, like in the protest movement. It's very encouraging for people to see that there are people all around the world. And I will tell you personally, when I see one of our MPs traveling to a remote country, and they wake up in the morning and they see 20 people with Israeli flags in front of their hotel, this feeling that we will chase them everywhere is one of the key success of this protest movement.
And my last question for you, Ami, maybe the hardest one. Are you optimistic?
I am extremely optimistic. I think I'm always saying when I'm speaking in the protest that we literally had a miracle. This government did a very critical mistake. If they would not move so fast, we will not react the way we reacted. We suddenly discovered the Zionist movement again. There is now a very solid Zionist, classic Zionist organization, people that are saying, we are following the principles of the Declaration of Independence, exactly what we said before. A Jewish democratic state, and people are willing to fight. If you see it from the reserve soldiers of the IDF, in the tech community, and the doctors and many other organizations, they're very much saying, we will not be here if it will not be a democracy. This is something I didn't hear for 20 years when, things like this happen on a small scale. So I'm extremely optimistic. I think that once this terrible government will cease to exist, we will have one of the best governments. I don't know who will lead it, but I think it will be one of the best government we ever had, because it will be after many years that the Israeli parliament will actually care about the Israelis versus their personal agenda, because those people with the personal agendas, we will not let them into power anymore.
That's perfect. Ami, thanks a lot. It was a pleasure talking to you. Congratulations on all your work, and the best luck continuing to represent the importance of Israeli democracy.
Thank you so much. And thank you for your support once again.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thanks for your audience. Ciao.